So, you're finalists yet again in an architectural prize. What does the Mies mean to you?
Well, we're very happy to be finalists in this prize, but we know this prize because we have sometimes occasionally in the past been shortlisted for this prize in the final 40, never in the final 5, but we have the record of the books, and you know, if you go back through that record, which is about the same length as our practice, 25 years or so, if you go back through it, it is a very it has integrity, I think, and it is a very meaningful survey of actually what really matters in European. It's a open and it's a progressive survey of what matters in European architecture. It has a good history.
And do you both consider yourselves European architects?
Yes, I'd say so, very much. I think, you know, we're obviously really pleased about this. I think it's the fact that we're Irish architects short finalist for a building in London, in England, is a really interesting thought, and then that's being looked at in the context of other European buildings. But I think we do feel very European. We feel that our work comes out of a sense of understanding of European cities, European culture, and that, you know, we feel very at home in many European cities. We're in any Italian city, we're at home in Paris, in London, of course, which is like our second home, and now in Budapest, where we're working, that there is this sense of a kind of culture about the scale of cities, about the making of streets and places and spaces, which is essentially European, and which we feel we belong to. I think also ours is, previous generations of Irish architects were much more influenced by America, and I think ours was the first generation to say, let's consciously look at Europe, let's think about ourselves in the context of what's happening in the cities of Europe, what contemporary architects are doing in relation to history and the past and the future. So yeah, I think Europe, a sense of Europeanness has always been in the way we approach our work.
And the Swee Hock Centre is quite difficult to place culturally, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we had an aspiration to try and remind London of its true character or something. We wanted to build a London-y building. Our first comment in the competition entry was to say that London is a city of bricks, and we're going to build a kind of city building out of bricks. But I think the question of resolving the urban complexity of the site, which is that building is discussing with itself, the urban complexity of its setting, we see that very much in European city terms. I think it's a deeply European project. It probably could be a sensibility that could work in other congested or convergent conditions because of the layers and layers and layers of restrictive kind of conditions, and yet deep cultural possibilities. So I think we're trying to build a place that feels like a corner of London, but feels like a part of the European culture, for sure.
Because I don't think anything has been done quite like that in London before.
Yeah, maybe that's an interesting thought, that maybe it takes a person who's slightly an outsider to come in and look at a place and find what they perceive to be the kind of essence of that place. So maybe it's easier for us, based in Dublin, to see what John calls the Londonness of London, or to really try to interpret the place and then present it back to itself through this building, which
I mean, it is a poetic reading of its situation, but it is one that is dedicated to the character of the place it's in. We looked very carefully at the brick buildings around the location at the LSE. We brought our clients to look at the wall that John Soane built at the back of his house, the museum buildings wall. We all gazed at the bricks in that wall for some time. We looked at if you walk around the streets around that area, there are little pockets taken out of pubs, with little porch entries, and we said to ourselves at the very beginning, the building needs to yield and we need to scoop space out of its volume in order to give something back, sacrifice something back to the street. And there are countless examples of that within 100 metres of...
Well, even the old school building right next door
right
does
next
that.
door. And so actually what we are doing is just opening our eyes and saying, look, is this character, this, and this, let's combine them all in a way that doesn't look like those, but acts like those. And so when you go into the building and you look out the windows, those windows are looking down the streets that they are aligned on, and they're pulling the streets into the building. Some people were surprised when they went inside to find that the building makes more sense from the inside looking out than it apparently did at first sight from the outside, because it's not an object resisting approach. It's an invitational building to draw people up and in and make them feel free to circulate within.
Yeah, I think one critic said it was perhaps tortuous, but I think that when you go there, it feels easy, and that's what we were trying to do. It feels kind of obvious how you move through it. In fact, almost to the extent that the building maybe feels smaller than it is, because you can easily walk through up the stairs, make your way to the very top without encountering a door, without going through lobbies, because we were trying to bring this sense of the street life, the little alleys and lanes of LSE that are the campus of LSE. We were trying to bring those inside and to make the life of the students, to make it an easy building for student life, a kind of relaxed, easy building, but also kind of dynamic and lively. So we're trying to be relaxed and lively at the same time, which maybe is what we think student life is about. I think those.
And the built scheme is very close to the competition idea, isn't it? How did the idea germinate? Where did it come from and how did it germinate?
It is very close to the competition idea, and that's interesting to look back on it now, 5 years later, and realise that one thing it did do was, and everybody in the project stayed close to the competition idea as the building changed inside itself, which means that somewhere in this idea there is a flexibility or adaptability. There is a possibility in that building for the uses to further change, and because it is actually in the end an open plan warehouse inside in itself. Its services are stacked, its circulation is stacked, and its structure is open, so functions can change, but it is characterized by the idea of itself as the gathering building at the middle of the campus. We were lucky in the competition that a lot of information, an overload of information, was provided by the client. So we knew very many of the restrictive conditions of the site. It's not a sketch design in the competition. It's a very developed competition design because the brief was very developed, the client guidelines were very developed, and midway through the design, we had a workshop with the client. All the participating shortlisted architects had a workshop with the client where they tried out the ideas, and the client got a feedback during the very early design process. So I'd say it's an unusual story. The hazard of competition is you do the wrong design, and when you meet the project it doesn't fit. In this case we had quite a lot to go on, and it stuck.
Well, congratulations both. I'm one of the jury. Look forward to us all seeing all 5 schemes.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Tony.